Hi, friends. Welcome to another edition of Fantastic First Grade Frogs. Today, it's all about reptiles. You can see this snake that's hiding in its rock really is excited about reptiles today because a snake is a reptile. So let's talk snakes. Let's start with this Massasauga rattlesnake right here. This is Michigan's only venomous snake. Venomous means that it can inject poison through its fangs. It lives in wetlands or in drier parts that are near the wetlands. It gets to be about 2 to 3 feet long, and it eats moles, mice, shrews, and frogs. In the wintertime, it will go to the wetlands and sleep in an old crayfish or a small animal burrow, and it'll go back to the same place year after year. Massasauga rattlers tend to be shy, but if they get upset, they will shake their rattle. They have a declining population. That means there's fewer of them than there used to be. Now let's move on to this Colorado desert sidewinder. Now, of course, I did not travel to Colorado to find this guy. We are at the Detroit Zoo looking at snakes. This is actually found in the southwestern United States. It likes to live in the desert. It gets up to about 3 feet long, and it is a venomous snake. When it's very hot, it's not out during the daylight. It tends to be nocturnal, or it'll come out in the morning and in the evening. It moves in an S shape, and it likes to eat lizards and rodents. It sits under the sand, under loose sand, and then waits. And when something comes by, it bites it. And like all snakes, it swallows its food whole. Let's move on now to this Timor python. It's about 5 to 8 feet long, and it lives in Indonesia. This python will eat small reptiles, birds, mice, and rats. They can live over 20 years. They hatch from eggs, and the mom will put about 5 eggs in a pile and coil around them to keep them nice and snuggly. They're considered to be actually a very nervous and highly active snake. Now let's look at the Aruba Island rattlesnake. It's a very rare rattlesnake. It only lives on Aruba, and it's critically endangered. That means there aren't very many of them left. It likes dry, rocky areas with cactuses. It is very endangered because of development. Humans have taken over parts of their habitat for our own human things, and so there's not very much room left for the rattlesnake. Plus, we've introduced non-native snakes. So that would be snakes that don't usually live on Aruba, and those snakes have competed with the Aruba Island rattlesnake, and so there's not as much for the Aruba Island rattlesnake to eat. There are even goats that live there that destroy the habitat. So we really have to be careful, or else the Aruba Island rattlesnake could be gone forever. Do you see a snake in this picture? How about now? This is the West African Gaboon viper. It's very camouflaged to look like leaves that have fallen. It's blending in with all those great leaves on the forest floor. It can be more than 6 feet long, one of the largest vipers in Africa. It lives in rainforests on the forest floor, and it eats small and medium-sized mammals and birds. It will hide and wait until something comes by. It's a fairly calm snake, but it is venomous, and it has 2-inch-long fangs, the longest of any venomous snake. Do you see a snake in this picture? How about now? That's the emerald tree boa. It lives in trees in tropical rainforests of South America. It's nocturnal. That means it's awake at night. And it will wait in a tree to strike small rodents that are on the forest floor below. So it just sits on a tree branch toward the forest floor, and when a rodent walks by, it will strike and eat that rodent. They grow to be over 6 feet long. And here is a black-headed python. Do you see it? There it is. It lives in Australia, in warm desert areas. In the day, it lives in spaces between rocks. It eats lizards and snakes mostly, but sometimes it eats small mammals and birds. It's a constrictor, which means it squeezes its food and then eats it. It can be up to 6 feet long. It's nocturnal, and it's not venomous. The Savu island python gets to be 3 to 5 feet long. It lives in Indonesia. It hides under rocks and shrubs and eats mice and rats. Here's the Jamaican boa. Do you see it? Now you see it. It lives only in Jamaica. It can be over 6 feet long and lives in woodland habitats. It eats bats, birds, rats, and its young eats lizards and frogs. Now, believe it or not, this snake will hang from tree limbs and snatch bats and birds right out of the air. They'll constrict them and then swallow them whole. Isn't that amazing? They're arboreal. That means they live in trees, and that's how they're able to do that. They're also nocturnal, which means they're awake during the night. They have a vulnerable status. They have lost a lot of habitat to humans, and there's a lot of non-native species that are competing for food. Now let's move out of the snake area, and let's look at some crocodilians. Here we have a Chinese alligator. Now, a Chinese alligator is not quite like an American alligator. It's not quite as big. It's 4.5 to 5 feet long, but it eats snails, mussels, which is a shellfish, and some fish. It is critically endangered. There's not a whole lot of them left in the wild. They live in lakes, ponds, and swamps, and they're nocturnal. They're awake at night. During the day, they dig tunnels to hide in. Here is a dwarf caiman. It's about 4 to 5 feet long. It's the smallest crocodilian, which means among the alligators and crocodiles, it's the smallest. It likes to eat fish, tadpoles, snails, insects, and small mammals. It's nocturnal and lives in South America, and it likes fast-moving streams and rivers. Now here's a lizard. This is the San Esteban Island chuckwalla. It's in the iguana family of lizards, and it lives on islands in the Gulf of California. It is endangered. It doesn't drink water. It gets all the water it needs from plants that it eats. Leaves, fruit, flowers. It lives in the desert, and when it's scared, it runs and hides. Now here's a shingle-backed skink. This is another kind of lizard. When it's threatened, or when it's scared, it opens its big pink mouth and sticks out its blue tongue to scare away predators. It has a lower eyelid that is see-through to help keep out dirt, so it can close its lower eyelid and keep out the dirt, but still see. It gets to be about 14 inches long, just over a foot long, and it lives in Australia. It eats both insects and plants. Here's a beaded lizard. This lizard and the Gila monster are the only 2 venomous lizards in the world. They get to be about 3 feet long, and they eat rabbits, rodents, birds, lizards, frogs, eggs, insects, and worms. They spend most of the time in shelters like rocky crevices, that means like cracks between rocks, and in burrows. They come out when the temperature is just right. So when it's hot outside, they come out at night, and when it's cool outside, they come out during the day. Once again, this lizard is threatened by habitat loss. Here's a black iguana. It lives in southern Mexico, in hot, dry areas, or in forested areas too. It's one of the fastest running lizards. It has been clocked at 30 miles per hour, if you can believe that. Doesn't look like it in this picture, does it? It likes to eat green leaves, insects, eggs, and small animals, and it can be 3 to 4 feet long. Here is a giant plated lizard. It hides in cracks and rocks and fills its lungs with air to wedge itself into place when it's scared. It gets to be about 2 feet long, and it lives in Africa in dry habitats. It likes to eat insects, fruit, leaves, and small lizards. Now this guy is a water monitor. Big, isn't it? It lives in Asia. It likes to live on riverbanks and swamps. It gets to be about 4 to 5 feet long. If it's threatened by a predator, it will climb to escape, but it also would jump into the water. It lives on bird eggs, birds, small mammals, fish, lizards, snakes, and even baby crocodiles. It can stay underwater for 30 minutes, and believe it or not, it will chase its prey. It doesn't just sit there and wait for its prey to come along. Now let's move on to another kind of reptile. This is an eastern box turtle. This one is found all over the eastern United States, including in Michigan. In fact, it's Michigan's only true terrestrial, that means it stays on land most of the time, turtle. It has a hinged shell, so it can pull its head, tail, and limbs inside. It gets to be about 4 to 8 inches long, and it lives in meadows and woodlands. It likes to eat plants, mushrooms, insects, eggs, and fish. In the winter, it will burrow in mud or under leaves to stay nice and warm. Now this big turtle is a giant South American river turtle. It's one of the largest freshwater turtles in the world at 2.5 feet. It eats fallen fruits and seeds, so fruits and seeds that fall into the water. It also eats insects, aquatic invertebrates, and plants. It is an endangered turtle. Here's a yellow spotted side-necked turtle. It lives in the Amazon River in South America. It gets to be about 2 feet. It likes calm water, not fast water, and it eats plants and small animals. This is a diurnal turtle. It's awake in the daytime. Here's the fly river turtle. It's also called a pig-nosed turtle because its nose looks a little bit like a pig nose. It has flipper-like front legs and webbed back legs. It is also about 2 feet long, and it lives in New Guinea, Australia, and Indonesia. It likes warm tropical waters, streams, lakes, and other places that have slow currents and soft bottoms to the lake or river. Mostly, it lives in freshwater environments, but it can live in where there's a little bit of salt water in the water. It eats mostly plants, but sometimes it'll eat snails, insects, shrimp, and small fish. Finally, we see a painted turtle, and this one's actually out in a pond at the zoo. It's Michigan's state reptile. It's about 4 to 10 inches long, and it likes to live in shallow water in ponds. It'll eat pond plants, insects, crayfish, and mollusks, and in the wintertime, it has to bury itself in the mud to stay warm. Well, my friends, I hope you enjoyed our tour of the reptiles at the Detroit Zoo. Reptiles are very cool. Remember, they are ectothermic. They need to warm up in the sun to keep their bodies at a warm temperature. So often, if you go out on a walk, you might see turtles basking in the sun in Michigan to stay warm. Turtles, snakes, crocodilians, and lizards are fascinating critters, and I hope you get to meet more of them out there in the big wide world. Bye!